everyone. Oh my gosh. Um, Thank you so much for coming, for being here. If you don't know who I am, my name is Christiana Morales. I am from an organization called Self-Determination Institute, and we are an organization that does research for self-determination program, as well as does trainings and outreach. I know many of you from former positions and places that I've worked with. Hi, Kaylee. It's so good to see you. Um, and I see so many familiar names, so thank you so much for coming. We're going to start with a few announcements that I want to let you know about. So the first one is that the Master Plan on Developmental Services, hi Lori, actually finished up their work, which is amazing. It was a lot of work. They came up with, I want to say it was over 170 recommendations. But if you're interested in looking at that, and seeing how they plan on implementing it. I'm going to put the information in the chat. They have the actual plan um, available for you to read to see what the recommendations were, as well as a little video. And so there were a lot of recommendations around self-determination program in there. So it is something to go and check out and see what's going on. Um, if you have not been to an orientation, if you're brand new and you are looking to get into the self-determination program, the State Council of Developmental Disabilities has an orientation, and I'm going to put that link in the chat for you. They have a calendar so you can see, they do them all online. And so that is one way you can do your orientation, as well as the most of the regional centers have their own orientation, so you can do one or the other. It counts for both. So if you're interested in doing that first step of getting in, the orientation is here. Let me put that in the chat for you. Oops, hold on. That's the master plan. I almost did the master plan again. Okay. And the Lanterman Regional Center, FDLRC, has a support group that meets on April 30th at 10 a.m. If you're interested in going, I will put the registration link in the chat for that as well. There you go. So I think that's all of my announcements that I can think of. The plan for our lunch meeting is please, everybody, bring your lunch, enjoy, bring your questions, because we're going to have lots of time for question and answer. But we're also going to have presenters each time, real quick, to introduce either they're a provider or financial management service. Our next meeting, which is the third Tuesday of every month, our new SDP Ombuds person is going to be here to introduce herself, because we have a new one again. I know that we go through them quite often. But it's somebody who you might be familiar with, and so she's going to come, introduce herself, and you can ask any questions you have for her there. And so our first presenter at our first meeting, which is so exciting, is Payman Dadmer, and he is the owner of ACE Financial Management Service. If you're not familiar with what a financial management service is, if you're new to self-determination program, financial management service is the only vendored service you're required to have in self-determination. And they are the ones who are going to pay for all of your services. So the money never comes to you directly. It goes to them through authorizations, and they pay for all the services. And so we have lots of choices in California right now. I think we might be up to 24. My list keeps changing. So, and what we see a lot of the questions, what's the best FMS? We call them FMS for short. And the answer is the one that works for you. So every single financial management service has different ways of doing things because they're all private businesses. And so the trick is to find the one that works with your regional center and that works well for you. And so with that said, I want to introduce Payman, and he's going to tell you a bit about ACE.
Thank you, Christiana. I remember when I first started, you were one of the first people I was introduced to kind of randomly and by chance. And at the time, I didn't realize what a big deal you were. So you invited me to your, TV webinar, and then people just started contacting us shortly after that. So very excited to be here for your first luncheon. And as you said, there are a number of FMS options available today, which is very different from when I started this business about, I guess, a year and a half ago now. At the time, there were probably half as many FMS options, and everybody had a wait list. Almost nobody would return your call or respond to email. You had to wait a very long time to get a response. And then the response would be contact us in 4 months to go on the wait list. And then at that point, you would finally get to go with the FMS that's willing to take you. So the decision-making process was a lot easier. You'd go with the one that's willing to take you, but unfortunately, that would not necessarily be the best fit for any particular family. So we set out to change that. And I think through the work that we did, as well as some of the other individuals that really put their heart and soul into this, we're now dealing with a different landscape of FMSs. We may have gone the other way where we have maybe too many now or too many options, but people are able to actually have Zoom meetings and meet with their FMS and discuss their questions. I remember when people would show up to Zoom, they were confused and shocked that somebody actually showed up. They were expecting to be ghosted, but now it's kind of become standard for the FMSs to make that option available, which is great. And people are able to actually choose. There are no wait lists. Most of the FMSs, including us, don't have a wait list anymore. So it's a significant improvement from just about a year ago. And I'm very happy for that. As far as ACE is concerned, we really set out to solve a few major problems. One was the whole waitlist issue. The other one was even once you started with an FMS, and sadly, that's still the case today, you would be handed an intake packet, which would be in the form of a 60-page PDF document, collection of random PDF forms and things to fill out. And expectation was to print it, fill it out, take a picture, sign it, send it back. And then the invoice processing similarly follows the same pattern. Copy, take a picture, email it, have the vendor email it, get the client's approval, and a lot of things would get lost. So we took a different approach. Our solution is very much based on technology. So we eliminated the back and forth with the vendors and the emails that get lost perpetually and go to spam filters and all that. Everything's handled through the secure portal. So that makes a big difference. And it also allows us to provide live, accurate accounting information, which is critical to managing a spending plan. So even though I said I won't share my screen, I will share my screen. I did find a little presentation. And let's go through some of the basics. And I see a lot of familiar names here. I apologize in advance because you probably heard all of this before. So bear with me. So in terms of what we focus on, we want to make sure that the information is accurate, that the SDP funds are conveniently accessible, and that we're being effective for our clients. We support all three models: bill payer, co-employer, and sole employer. The disclaimer is sole employer, I'd like to say, is by invitation only at this point. We found that for our budget size, sole employer is not the right fit for most of the clients. So if it is, then we'll have the conversation with the client and we'll help them set that up. But for the most part, for the smaller budgets, which we tend to be at the 120 or below level, co-employer seems to be a better option. We do evaluate the budgets on a case-by-case basis. So if it's over 120 or 125, it doesn't mean we won't take the client. If it's under, it doesn't mean we'll automatically take them. Just like the clients need to determine that we're the right fit for them, we need to determine if the client's the right fit for us. If they have some very unique needs that we feel is not our area of strength, we'll be honest and we'll let them know that they may do better with a different FMS. Some clients may not be as technologically advanced as some other ones. We're not talking about writing code or sending a rocket to orbit, but you do need to be able to, let's say, order something from Amazon. If that's too challenging, we're probably not the right solution. There is no wait list, and we do accept transfers. The one thing to consider with transfers with any FMS is it does require essentially reconciliation of the spending plan before doing the transfer, because you need to figure out where to draw the line in the sand and leave the money behind and then bring the rest over to the new FMS, which I'm sure you in your IF practice are very familiar with this exercise. The trick to this is a lot of times families are transferring from their FMS because they're not happy with the accounting that their FMS is doing. So if you're having a hard time figuring out what's paid and isn't paid at the old FMS, it's going to make the transfer that much more difficult. So that's something to be mindful of and just plan for ahead of time.
Payment, is it easier if they transfer on the annual rollover?
Absolutely. On the annual renewal, it's just like a new client coming in. The new FMS gets a brand new spending plan. They don't have to worry about what the old FMS did or didn't pay or any of that. So we oftentimes tell clients when they're in the last, I'd say 6 months of their spending plan, to try to tough it out as much as they can and do it on the renewal. Everybody will be happier for it. The service coordinators, your IF, your FMS, both sides. We do come across situations where a client is 4 months in with their FMS and they haven't had a single bill paid and they just can't wait any longer. So when it's something like that, then you kind of have to do what you have to do. I would say the saving grace is if you are one of those clients who has been struggling with your FMS, chances are your service coordinators in the loop because you've had conversations with them and they've already been kind of prepping to help you with the transition. So we have had situations where the service coordinators have gone the extra mile and literally in days got all the authorizations to help the client when they did finally find where they want to go. So the key is to communicate as much as possible with the IF and service coordinator to make sure they're ready to help facilitate that. The regular onboarding, we like to start about 4 weeks before the start date. And we do accept late stage clients, but if it makes sense. The key is to make sure there's no gap in coverage. So if you're in traditional, things are working, as exciting as it might be to want to get into the SDP, if you're a week before the start date, there's a good chance you're going to end up with some gap in coverage. There is a process, mostly on the regional center side, that needs to be followed. And they are not always able to get authorizations out at a moment's notice. It does need to go through several steps. The big difference in working with us is the registration and processing times. Everything is 100% digital. It takes less than a minute to register, whether you're an IF, vendor, client, service coordinator. We approve the vendors in 1 business day, and employees are hired about a week after completing all the requirements. The key there is after completing all the requirements. It takes about 5 minutes to collect all the data we need from the employees. It might take you 2 weeks to get your employee to spend those 5 minutes to give us what we need, especially if the employee happens to be a family member. For some reason, there isn't much leverage over family members to get them to start working. We like to give you kind of a need to know approach so you don't get overwhelmed. So we tell you what the next like 2 or 3 steps are. And then once you've done a couple more steps, we'll give you the next 2 or 3 steps. So this is our kind of 4-step onboarding. It starts with getting a draft of the spending plan. We like to review every spending plan and sign off on it before it even goes to the regional center. The reason for that is when you're at the trampoline park is not the time for us to have the conversation on whether or not we can pay for that purchase. We want to know all of those things ahead of time. So if there's nuances to how we're going to pay for it, what sort of documentation we need, we do that before you make a commitment to go with your FMS. As far as payment options, ACH, check, and credit card are the options available. We pay twice a month. If it's in the first half, it gets paid by the 25th. If it's in the second half, it gets paid by the 10th of the following month. We follow the same schedule for vendors, for employees' payroll, for reimbursements, for purchase requests. So it makes it easy to follow and make sure that you're doing your part to make sure everybody gets paid. I would say, as Christiana said, the key is to find the right FMS that's right for you. I like to think we're right for 98% of the clients out there that are in our budget size. But I would say for those 2%, we're 100% not the right fit. So you want to make sure you're interviewing your FMS, you're asking all the right questions to make sure that it is the right fit and it is going to work well for you. Um, we take a different approach. We end up turning away some clients because we want to make sure we are the right fit. And if you're looking for an FMS that is going to support you, give you the help you need, and respond timely, I would say we're a good fit. If you're looking for FMS that's going to be relaxed on the DDS rules and they're going to be casual about the way they approve things and their documentation requirements and all that, we're probably not the right fit for you. We are a family, SDP family ourselves. My daughter's in the SDP. That's how I got introduced to this. I am very invested in protecting the integrity of this program to make sure it's there for the long run. So if there is anything that doesn't seem to comply with the rules and requirements of the program, we'll be the first ones to let you know that that's where we're not able to support it anymore. So that kind of covers it. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
We do have questions, and thank you. That was so helpful. And I think one of the first questions was, if people are transferring to you from another financial management service, do their employees need to do background check again? And are you able to get them transferred?
So that's a very good question. Um, Different FMSs have different requirements on whether or not they require a background check. So there's one category, which is if there is direct personal care involved, then a background check is required. That's the DDS requirement. We all have to comply with that. There are exceptions, such as a household family member, but other than that, employees will be required. Now, if DDS doesn't require it, your FMS might still require it. For example, if the client is a minor, we as an FMS have decided we do require a background check, even if DDS doesn't. So that depends on your FMS. Assuming your FMS does require it, and assuming that the previous FMS had conducted one, it is not necessary for them to do another background check. We're able to simply ask the DDS to transfer the existing one over to the new FMS. That used to take about a day or two. They're a little backlogged now, so it takes about maybe 4 or 5 days. But within a week, they're able to transfer that, and you don't have to do it again.
So good to know if you're planning on that switch between that you're going to need that time also to if
Exactly.
you need those. Um, the next question was, can money that is not used in their year one budget be transferred to your year two budget? I'm actually going to answer that one
I was
because
just going to say that's a question for you. You're in
that's a
department.
question, yeah, for me, which is no. You have your budget is for 12 months. Those authorizations end at the end of 12 months, and then you have a new budget. That's what they call. Some people call it rollover. Some people call it redetermination. I've heard both terms used depending on your regional center. And so whatever you did not use now. Your next year budget, your second year, third year, is going to be based on what was spent, not what was authorized, but what was spent in the last year. So if you had money that was authorized you didn't spend, you can explain to the regional center why you didn't use it. And they have the ability to put it back into your budget. So let's say, you couldn't find somebody to hire or circumstances change, you decided not to use that service this year, but you're going to need it the next one, you can explain that and they can put it back in. But no, you can't use what was left over and add it into whatever the next year's is. The next
Kristen, I
question,
do have a little hack for that possibly. So in some cases, if there's a very large purchase that they wanted to make as part of this current spending plan. And the timing just worked out in a way that they weren't able to do it, but it's around the corner. They could extend the current spending plan. They won't get any more money, but whatever money was left in the current one could be spent in the month following if they get a 1 month extension.
So that would
There's like a
be,
large tuition or camp or
yeah.
something like that. They may be able to do that. So that's the only kind of sort of workaround, I would say.
And I agree. So this is something that it's important to talk to your service coordinator, your IPP team as you're doing that rollover. If you have like that, I think that's a great example of a circumstance where there might be something in particular, like a one-time payment or those kind of things. So do talk about it. Everything is intended to be individualized in self-determination. So there are kind of these general rules, but then always talk to your service coordinator because there can be exceptions. The next question was for you, Payman. Overall, what percentage of cases are over 125,000?
So that's a good question. I have no idea what it is in the SDP kind of makeup of things. I can only talk about my experience, and my experience is not to be relied on because the word's kind of out on what our limit is. So the people who have two, three, 400,000 in budgets don't even contact us anymore. Initially, I would say when we first started and nobody knew what our limits were, I'd say maybe 10%, 10 to 15% were over that budget. And I would say 85, 90% are probably under 200. So if we were able to increase our budget at some point, I would say that would be the next kind of milestone that I would want to shoot for. Because I think if we were able to go up to 200, that would cover most of the clients out there. Unfortunately, over 200, your options are very limited.
Well, and then the next question kind of fits that. And I'll echo what Payman said is that DDS has released some data and they gave an average budget, but they didn't really break it down by categories. So we don't really know. It would be a great Public Records Act if you were interested in asking DDS. They could probably tell you. Um, so then the next question is why do you have budget caps? It's a
I was
and it's
waiting
a
for this
legitimate
one.
question, right?
It's a very legitimate question. So the simple answer is the way the DDS SDP program works is when you pay your vendors and your employees, I, as your financial management service, have to take my piggy bank, take money out of it, pay every single employee, pay every single vendor, and then submit an invoice to the regional center and get reimbursed for that. So as we take on more and more clients, that ends up being a very substantial amount of money that we have to pay. Now, there is a directive out there that requires the regional centers to pay us within 1 week, but and to be fair, for the most part, they do until they don't. And when they don't is when something's happened where the accounting person got food poisoning and is not in that week. So completely understandable things. But the fact of the matter is, as the FMS, in order for us to be there for the long run and never put ourselves in a position where we're telling a client that their employee is not getting paid on time or their vendor is not getting paid on time because we're short on cash, however that's phrased. And it has happened. There have been 50 plus FMSs that have come and gone out of business over the last 3 years. So what we do is every time we take a client, we essentially set aside about 4 to 6 weeks worth of their projected spending. So we have that money earmarked. So if there is a hiccup, somebody does get food poisoning at the regional center, or sometimes we go to bill and literally the system says the budget does not exist. And now it takes a week for DDS and tech support and everybody else to kind of figure it out. So then our clients never hear any of that. We're able to cover it. We deal with our partners. We figure it out, sort it out, move on. So that money is limited because I haven't won the lottery yet. And also it costs. So you have to pay interest on the money you're using for your working capital. So we came up with 120, 125 as kind of the range of what makes sense in return for the amount the regional center pays us on a monthly basis for our services. Anything more than that, we feel comes at the cost of sacrificing quality of service, slower response times, payments not being processed as quickly. And I don't think it's a shock or surprise that some of the FMSs that do handle the larger budgets are also known for not having the best customer service or turnaround time. Um, I don't say that negatively. I respect the fact that they're taking on budgets that I don't touch, but it does come at a cost. It's simply not possible. The economics don't work out for you to provide the level of service we do with a 1 business day response time. Last month, our average response time was 1 hour, 56 minutes. You can't do that and support a 400,000 budget with the amount of money we're getting.
And I think that maybe everybody doesn't understand that, and it should be on your spending plan, but the financial management services get a monthly fee. And so that fee has to kind of pay for all of their administrative costs. And they get the same fee for $100,000 budget, a $10,000 budget, or a, $500,000 one, but they're fronting a lot more money. And so that's why it becomes, a business decision that each of the financial management services has to make of where they are able to work in that space. I do want you to know this is something DDS is very aware of and thinking about and talking about. We need to make sure we do have financial management services that are available for the large budgets, and so there are absolute discussions on how can we make this work for the thing with self-determination program is we are all interdependent on one another. The financial management services, the service coordinators, the independent facilitators, um, we're all working together to make sure that the participant gets what they need. And so we I think kind of going with that attitude, like we're in this together. So find your partners. I think that's kind of what I like to say is find the people who are going to support you, your partners in this. The next question we had is, can vendors submit their own invoices directly to ACE?
Yes-ish. So they can in the sense that they have their own login and they can go in and submit their invoice. And in fact, we encourage that. The ish part comes in that we don't want to ever get anything from the vendor. Our commitment is ultimately to the client, and the client has the autonomy and control over what's spent. So what our system does is the vendor's only option is to submit it to the client. The client clicks approve, then it comes to us. So that gives the client the convenience of not having to upload it if the vendor is willing and wanting to, but at the same time being able to control how their money is spent.
So what we do know is that every invoice has to be approved by the participant or somebody that they assign. And so I think that's how every FMS does that is a little different. And right. So I think that was an excellent explanation of how you do it at ACE. Next question is, can you give more information for business vendors and the onboarding process and requirements?
Sure. So the business sign-up process is quite simple. Typically, it starts with the client clicking the Add Vendor button on our portal, and all they need is really first name, last name, and email address. Then the vendor will get an email with a unique link. They follow it. All they need to provide is just basic contact information, address, phone number, email. Once they're in the portal, there are 3 pieces of information we need. First is payment preference. So they need to tell us if they want to get paid by a check, credit card, or ACH. If it is direct deposit ACH, they'll give us their bank information. If it's credit card or check, they just check the box. And then the next step is to give us a copy of their business license. They just need to upload a copy of it with a valid date. The third step is to fill out a W-9, which our system does for the vendors. So their name, address, anything that you've already told us once will automatically put in there. So all the vendor needs to do is check the box for their form of entity, type their tax ID, and click submit. That entire process, from the moment the vendor gets the email until they're done and the ball's in our court, takes 41 seconds. I know that because I've timed it, because a lot of clients worry about their vendors not wanting to sign up because they've had bad experiences with SDP and they've got complicated forms, and all of that. And I was asked if I would speak to the vendors to make it more comfortable. And I did the math and I figured each client has 10 vendors. I will be spending the rest of my life speaking to them. So instead, I recorded the video showing it takes 41 seconds and offer it to the vendors. And once they see that, they're pretty comfortable with signing up.
Um, our next question was, you mentioned reimbursements. What type of reimbursements do you authorize?
Mileage, that's it. There is no reimbursement allowed in SDP. The only exception is mileage reimbursement for employees.
Um, Oh, this one I think was for me. Can you share who the new ombudsperson is? Yes, the new acting ombudsperson is Cynthia Solomon Ponce. She was the manager of the SDP office and is now acting as the SDP ombudsperson. Marlene Morales moved from the SDP ombudsperson office to being the acting manager at DDS. So lots of movement around here right now. So uh, I was able to answer that one. Okay, next question. Oh, well, I think you already answered this. How long does it take for a new business to get vendored with ACE FMS? You already answered that. It was less than a minute.
So actually, it takes less than a minute for them to register. It takes one business day for us to review and approve them.
Oh, there you go. That's a good point. So once they do fill out the paperwork, you're going to approve it. Once somebody's already in your system, then are they just ready to go for?
It takes 1 second.
Okay, so
41
somebody
goes down to one.
perfect. Okay. Um, Is there much difference in risk or liability for the financial management service in the co-employer model versus the sole employer?
Great. So this is my chance to send you my bill for legal advice. So yes, I would say there is a legal difference and then there is a practical one consideration. So from a legal standpoint, in the co-employer model, the FMS is the employer of record for all purposes. So effectively, from a client perspective, it's not much different than if you hire the staffing agency and ask them to send an employee to your house. Anything related to HR, breaks, overtime, meal period, rest period, injuries that happen, anything that happens related to the employee is the responsibility and risk of the FMS. Under the sole employer, it's a shared responsibility with most of the risky things being on the family side. Effectively, think of your FMS as a glorified HR consulting and payroll processor. You are the employer of record. You are responsible for making sure all the labor laws are being followed. The FMS will pay them what you tell them to pay effectively. Now, from a practical standpoint, the sole employer is not without risk for the FMS because if something were to happen, chances are the employee would think of the FMS as the deeper pockets and they would still kind of come after the FMS anyway. So what happens in practice and what should happen on paper are sometimes a little bit different. What we do is when we do have clients that do the sole employer, we pretty much hold them to the same requirements as if they weren't a co-employer. So we don't just take the position of, well, it's their risk. So if they don't have workers' comp insurance, we don't care. If they don't have liability insurance, we don't care. If they want to assume that their home insurance covers them, then we'll let them think whatever they want to think. So we'll actually take the position that they need to make sure they have the insurance certificates and the proper coverage. And we ask them to provide us a copy of it to make sure that they do.
So I'll say payment and I agree on like 99.9% of things. I have a little bit of a disagreement here, which is the SDP statute requires that financial management services make sure that the participants are following the laws and that their taxes are being paid and all of those things. So I believe that the financial management services are responsible to make sure you follow those laws, getting the correct workers' comp, and whether you're in co-employer or sole employer. So that's the only little
I
thing.
actually agree with you, but I would follow up with two questions. One is, what's the consequence if the financial management service doesn't fulfill that obligation? And two, how many of the FMSs out there with the sole employer are enforcing it and meeting their obligation?
I would say we don't know to either one of those, right? There isn't right now, we're not seeing a lot of enforcement. Unfortunately, the enforcement would be somebody gets sued, which we really don't want to happen. And
Right.
so I definitely believe that for everybody should be doing, whether you're in co-employer or sole employer, you need to follow the laws. You need to follow those labor laws. So one of the common things we hear is that somebody's upset because they have an employee that would prefer to be a 1099 employee rather than an employee, and they'll be upset with the financial management service. But it is not the financial management service's choice or fault. The state of California is very, very rigid and particular about that people are classified correctly. And so there's a test they have to do. And so if your financial management service does this test and says, no, this person is really an employee, they're not being mean to you or trying to give you a hard time. They're actually trying to protect you because it's really important. You can get in trouble if you misclassify people. So, kind of keep those things in mind that their role is not to be making your life harder, but to be keeping you, you know, following those rules. And California in particular is a very employee um, forward state. And so employers have to be there are a lot of rules, there are a lot of laws in California. And so it's really important that we do follow all of them. So um, I think this one might be for me. Are there any existing cases where international services are provided through self-determination program? If so, we'd like to know how those overseas services are processed and delivered under the program. So no, self-determination program is a California program. You can only spend money on services that happen in California. There are exceptions to you can pay for a service provider who is outside of California if the service is occurring in California. So, like if they have an online service or as long as the participant is in California, but they absolutely nothing where the anything international, it would never be covered. These are actually Medicaid. It's a combination of paid for through California money and federal Medicaid dollars, so that it would not cover anything international. Um, Another one. Can you explain the end of year paperwork that the clients need to manage? Are there any clerical items such as taxes concerned that there is to manage in co-employer? What are your employee? Oh, and what is your employer burden rate? There are a couple questions in there.
Sure. So with the co-employer, there is nothing for the clients to do paperwork wise. Once you get set up in our system, we handle everything for you. You are responsible for managing your budget essentially to make sure that you're staying on track. And we give you all the tools available. We literally have a fuel gauge that tells you when you're running out of money or if you're running low and all that. But there isn't any tax filings or anything that the clients have to really worry about. As far as the employer burden is concerned, for co-employer, ours is 25%. And for sole employer, it's 18.33. And that includes the California sick pay, which is 3.33% of that burden rate.
And does it include workers' comp?
It does. So workers' comp is always included. I'm sorry, for us, for the sole employer, it doesn't include workers' comp.
Okay.
For the co-employer, it does.
Okay.
And that's actually one of the items that a lot of times with clients that are interested in sole employer, we encourage them to go with an FMS that does include the workers' comp in their sole employer burden because it's not really an easy, convenient thing to kind of shop for and get on your own. So it would make sense to try to go with an option that includes that as part of the burden.
When you switch FMS companies, do you have to upload all of their information again, or does this information transfer from the previous FMS? Does it cost the vendor to enroll?
So that's a very good question. The answer is there is zero connection between your old FMS and the new one. There is no file that gets handed over. Sometimes we'll get asked, can you coordinate with the previous FMS and get my file? There's nothing for us to get. And the regional center does have your vendor information and all that, because when we submit invoices, we have to provide it to them, but they don't transfer that over either. So you will have to do it again. So that's when you have to really evaluate whether or not it makes sense to go to another FMS. If the new vendor process is 41 seconds, most of them don't mind. If it is download a PDF, fill it out, and sign it, send it back, and all that, you may very well have a hard time with some of your vendors wanting to go through that process. So I would recommend speaking to your vendors, and once you've decided which FMS you want to go with, and make sure they're comfortable and they will be switching, or at least the critical ones.
I'd also make a recommendation. So, um, every regional center has an SDP local volunteer advisory committee. And those committees, a lot of them will fund for coaching support. So, if you are in the self-determination program and you don't have an independent facilitator, this would be a really good time to reach out to coaching support because this isn't a super easy piece to do, like we said, and we want to, and it's really important we don't have that gap in service. We want to make sure that so you will have to all those people that you have in your current FMS when you switch, because remember they're all private businesses. When you switch to this new one, you got to get them all set up and running. As Payman said, if those providers happen to already be in their system, then you're good to go. But there may be some that aren't. So that's kind of one of those things you want to look at as you're planning for that switch over. Make sure that you can get everybody set up and running to go before that switch date because you don't want that gap in service. Um, I found that businesses are hesitant to become vendored because of the business license requirement. In unincorporated LA County, only certain types of businesses can obtain a business license. Have you found this?
So that's a good point. And we don't ask people to do things that is impossible. So if their county doesn't offer a business license, they can just send a screenshot of that message from the county, and we'll find other ways to verify that they're a legitimate operating business. I think as long as the vendor is a true legitimate vendor wanting to work with the SDP community, we would be able to find a way to get them approved and work with them.
I know where I live in Glendale that they don't require licenses. And so what a lot of times they'll say is just send us a screenshot that they don't require a license where you live. Um, so as independent facilitators, we run into that sometimes because even though we're running businesses, they don't require them. Um, can we share a link to this meeting and how do we describe the purpose of this meeting? Lori, was that you? Absolutely. I will get the link together. We'll share it. Oh, can I repeat the coaching service? Lori, do you want to explain what the coaching services do at North LA? I think you are the perfect person to explain it.
Well, at North LA, we currently have three coaching services that we offer if you're a North LA client, and they have a myriad of things that they will address with you. Anything from updating your spending plan to transitioning into the program once you're in the program. So we're really flexible at North LA. I've used them, and my son's in his fifth year, and it's because I didn't know the Excel spreadsheet stuff. So they did that for me and updated it. So there's all kinds of reasons that you could access this coaching service at North LA.
So if
Any
you
questions you have.
Yeah, so if you're ever stuck and you aren't working with an IF, or even if you are working with an IF and they're not sure what to do, I think the coaching service is great because they work specifically with that regional center, so they know that regional center's ways of doing things. And sometimes they know who to contact. Like just getting in touch with the right people is helpful. So I know Lanterman has one. I know Inland has them. So go and ask your local volunteer advisory committee if they have them. And if they don't, ask them. Say, hey, I think it's something we could use. The volunteer advisory committees will take public comment. And so it's a great opportunity to say, hey, we think this is a service that would be beneficial to us. Um, do you do you have a timeline as to when we will reevaluate your willingness, ability to accept budgets over 125K?
So, unfortunately, we don't. It will largely depend on whether or not, if and when, the regional centers and the DDS change their requirements as far as their payment terms, as well as the monthly amount that they pay us. In addition to the financial consideration that I mentioned, with the demand of the SDP program and it growing, we're constantly in a position of, let's say the money was free, we had unlimited capital. I would always be in a position of, do I help five families with $50,000 budgets or one with a 250? Because it takes the same kind of, effort to be able to do that from an operational financial standpoint. So unless something changes, just being honest, it's not going to change significantly. Maybe 125 will become 130 or 140, but it's not going to be changing in a significant way.
Is there a contact person for the Lanterman coaching service? Yes, give me a second. I will look it up and I will put it in the chat for you. Um, I don't think that if I remember right, I'm a co-chair of the Lanterman committee, and believe it or not, I don't remember what the contract was. I don't think we were as open as North LA's to what services they can provide, but I will put the info and you can call them and check to make sure. Um, Some sports gyms, they want a credit card for the SDP membership. Do they do that in case? Uh, there's probably two questions here, I'll say. Some of them want a credit card to pay for the membership, and some of them want credit cards on file. So maybe you can kind of answer both of those.
Sure. So both of those are possible. What we do is we issue a virtual credit card. So that number is unique to each client. It will have a spending limit of 0. And then you submit purchase requests. As you submit your purchase request, we authorize the amount to be spent. So that number can be left on file, but it does require a commitment on the client's part to make sure they submit the purchase request on a timely basis, that it's accurate, and that they're kind of keeping track of what's happening with it. Because if you put the card on file and your gym ends up charging $5 more one month, it's going to eat into whatever else you wanted to purchase that we authorize because it has a limited amount on that card. So then that throws off all of your other transactions. But if it's a scenario where you know the amount you'll be spending and you can plan it ahead of time, then both of those goals can be accomplished using the virtual credit card.
I think you brought up something that is kind of near and dear to my heart, which is you as a participant, when you join the self-determination program, we talk about the overall principles, which is um, freedom, authority, responsibility, support, and confirmation. That with that freedom does come that responsibility piece. And so it's really important that as a participant, you kind of realize you're taking on some of these responsibilities. So you do need to keep up with your spending, know where you're at, those kind of things. Uh, and so again, it depends on the financial management service of what type of a person you are, like for how you want to track that. So I think something like with ACE, where you can go online and you can see at any time, that's great for people who like online stuff. There are some people who want to just call someone and say, how much do I have left? You should be getting monthly statements. Check those monthly statements, look at them. Some financial management services monthly statements are better than others. So that's something you can think about as well of, how am I going to be able to track this? But it is important for you to keep on top of how much was spent. So I love Payman's point of, if one of them spends more than the others you're going to have a problem. So do stay on top of it. But that's great that you will put one on file because not everybody will do that. So that's super, super helpful and exciting. That makes a lot of people in this room happy. Um, oh, what are some good questions to ask when hiring an independent facilitator? I am going to recommend you go to the sdpresourcecenter.org. And there is a section on transition supports, and independent facilitators are on there. And about halfway, maybe three-quarters of the way down the page, there are actually a list of questions that you could ask your independent facilitator when you're looking for somebody. So I think that's the best place to do it. And I will put that in the chat right now so you have it. I just put the website in the chat there for you. If there are any independent facilitators for an adult in college with animation interests in Los Angeles County. Oh, yes. So please, this is a great point. If you are an independent facilitator and you're in the room and you are taking clients, please feel free to put your contact information in the chat, or if you're looking for an independent facilitator. So somebody had already put in here that they're looking for an independent facilitator. One of the major purposes of this meeting is to connect people. We want to make sure that people are able to find services. So yes, please look. If you're an independent facilitator, please feel free. If you're a provider, please feel free to put your information in the chat to share with everybody. Um, oh, well, this is a good question. Payment, what happens if a client is with ACE and they eventually receive an increase in the budget? Do you drop that client since they recently received a budget more than the 125K?
So we never drop a client. There have been maybe two or three cases where, because of the client's, let's say, adventurous activities in how they should be spending their SDP budget, we felt we weren't the right fit to support them. But as far as the budget increase is concerned, we'll continue to support the client. Generally, on a renewal, we will increase that, leave room for that budget. So if they go up to 140, 150, it's still not an issue. If it is going to be more than that, then we'll talk to the client to see exactly what their budget's going to be. And even if it does come up, we haven't had one yet where they've had to leave us. But if it's just going up so much that it's doubling or something and we can't handle it, then we would support them until they find where they need to go. But we would never put a client in a position where they're on a 30-day notice because their budget went up. The key thing to recognize is it's not that I can't handle a $200,000 or $300,000 budget. I can. I just can't handle 500 of them. So if I have one or two clients whose budgets double due to unforeseen circumstances, and they need us to continue supporting them until they find a better match, that's not a problem. We just can't make that the normal practice for us.
That's really good to know, is that you have flexibility. It's just, yeah, that totally makes sense. Are you considering getting vendored with RCOC?
So yes, I told Melissa, she wore me down. We finally gave in. We are getting vendored with RCOC. In fact, I should be getting the paperwork this week. So we have a couple 5-1 clients, starting clients with Orange County. So we're officially supporting all regional centers effective 5-1.
There you go. So yay. If a parent can navigate revising the spending plan independently, is it necessary or recommended to have an independent facilitator? So I will tell you that you are not required to use an independent facilitator. That is one of the things that you have a choice to use or not. If you are transitioning into the program, those services are 100% paid for by the regional center. Once you're in the program, when you want to have an independent facilitator, they won't increase your budget to pay for them. So when you use them, you have to be, very aware that that's coming out of your total overall budget amount. So how much you spend on it, you have to think about that. Independent facilitators can be very helpful in the sense that this is a complicated system. There is what I call a really steep learning curve for this, but once you've been doing it for a while, my hope is that over time you would need them less and less, and that you will, once you learn it, you're good. So my recommendation is if you have one that you like that works with you and you need that support, um, have them maybe the first year so you have one full process where you've done a rollover, you've learned how to get everything set up. You can also use them as needed. If you decide to change an FMS, have an independent facilitator come in and help you for just that part or for just a spending plan update or whatever. If you are absolutely able to navigate this and do the spending plan independently, then absolutely do it independently. Your service coordinator should help you. Also, like we talked about with, and a lot of times you can ask your FMS if you need a little bit of assistance there, like how they are doing it, so they can give you assistance. And then, as we talked about earlier, reach out to your local volunteer advisory committee if you do need a coach just for a little piece of it, but you don't need somebody all the time. So you aren't required to use an independent facilitator, but they can't, a good one is worth their weight in gold, I would say. Um, Oh, so they wanted to clarify the explanation earlier that an SDP participant in California wants to buy a robot made in Korea, but use it. Oh, that's an interesting question. I would still say probably not payment. Could we pay for something, a good outside of, I would think not.
No, unless they find a local vendor that's bringing it in. I mean, obviously, a lot of the stuff we buy are made in China and other places. So as long as the vendor that's contracting with us, so to speak, is based in California, we'd be able to accommodate it. But you can't go to Alibaba. We had one actually come up and order something from Alibaba and have it shipped from China and expect us to pay them. That's not going to work.
Yeah, so you would have to find that robot, somebody who imports it and has it here that they could.
Exactly. You know, there's one thing that I think at a high level is important for all of us as families going to the SDP to recognize. And that is that SDP is a program. It has restrictions. There is a sense of, I would say, a small percentage of the population have this misunderstanding of this is my right. I should be able to use whatever services I want, whatever vendor I want, and all of that. And the best example I can give is I probably pay about $3,000 a month for health insurance for my family. And I still can't go to any hospital I want. I can't go to any doctor I want. I can only go to the ones that contracted with Blue Shield of California and agree to their terms. It's kind of the same thing. You can go to any vendor that's willing to play by the SDP rules and is willing to sign up with the FMS and follow the invoice requirements and all of that. We don't impose any restrictions beyond that, but there is that minimum requirement that in order to earn your business, they need to be willing to play by the rules of the SDP program. So I think that's the expectation and a frame of mind that would serve well to go into this program with, so that you don't have an expectation that literally anybody who wants to work with you gets that opportunity. That isn't the case. It's not realistic.
I Thank you for bringing that up because it's something that I think we do need to talk about. I am actually a co-trainer for the SCDD orientation, and it's something we've been talking a lot about, making sure that people have realistic expectations when they come into the self-determination program. These are Medicaid dollars, and they have rules on what this money can be spent on. So what I like to call it is freedom within boundaries. So and my explanation is funny that you use the same analogy is I think of the traditional system as an HMO. You have to use their vendored services, and the self-determination program is like a PPO. You have a lot more opportunities, you have more places you can go, but they still have to be covered services. So I think that's kind of a way to think about this, that this is not a program that can pay for anything. There's rules on what things can and cannot be paid. And it is insurance. I think that's something that is kind of lost on some people. They don't realize it's Medicaid insurance. And so I think thank you. That's a very important piece. So we have a couple more questions, but we are running out of time. So I'm going to quickly answer the last ones, which was, can a parent be a paid IF um, if they are not certified? A parent can only be a paid independent facilitator for an adult. A parent cannot be a paid independent facilitator for a minor. And you don't need, there is no certification currently. It looks like there's going to be one coming up at some point, but there isn't. But you do have to have training. You have to show that you have training in independent facilitation. If you're going to do person-centered planning, you have to show you have training in person-centered planning in order to be a paid independent facilitator. And depending what part you're doing, if you're doing the transition part in, or if you're, and once you're in the program, it will depend on how you get paid as well and by whom. Um, where can I find information for the local volunteer advisory committees? Go to that same resource center, sdpresourcecenter.org website that I put in earlier. It has lists for every single local volunteer advisory committee, so you can find yours there. It's a great place. It has tons of information there. And so we are about to wrap up. We are 1 minute over. Payman, thank you so much for coming and being so patient and answering all of our questions.
Thank
Um,
you for having me.
it was so wonderful. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And we really appreciate you. We will see you the next month on our third Tuesday to have lunch with us. And expect to see our new ombudsperson. And we will have a provider to come and introduce themselves to you as well. So thank you all so much and have a wonderful rest of your week. Bye, everyone.